Think and Grow Rich, the landmark bestseller. Now revised and updated for the 21st century, Napoleon Hill revised and expanded by Dr. Arthur R. Pell. Jeremy P. Tarcher Penguin, a member of Penguin Group, USA, Inkita, New York Author's Preface to Original Edition. Author's Preface to Original Edition. Every chapter of this book mentions the money-making secret that has made fortunes for more than 500 exceedingly wealthy people, whom I have carefully analyzed over a long period of years. The secret was brought to my attention more than a quarter of a century ago by Andrew Carnegie. The canny, lovable old Scotsman carelessly tossed it into my mind when I was but a boy. Then he sat back in his chair with a merry twinkle in his eyes, and watched carefully to see if I had brains enough to understand the full significance of what he had said to me. When he saw that I had grasped the idea, he asked if I would be willing to spend 20 years or more preparing myself to take it to the world, to men and women who, without the secret, might go through life as failures. I said I would, and with Mr. Carnegie's cooperation, I have kept my promise. This book contains the secret, which has been put to a practical test by thousands of people from almost every walk of life. It was Mr. Carnegie's idea that the magic formula, which gave him a stupendous fortune, ought to be placed within reach of people who do not have time to investigate how people make money. He hoped that I might test and demonstrate the soundness of the formula through the experience of men and women in every calling. He believed the formula should be taught in all schools and colleges, and expressed the opinion that if it were properly taught, it would so revolutionize the entire educational system that the time spent in school could be reduced to less than half. His experience with Charles M. Schwab, see page 58, and other young men of Mr. Schwab's type, convinced Mr. Carnegie that much of what is taught in schools is of no value whatsoever in connection with the business of earning a living or accumulating riches. He arrived at this decision, having taken into his business one young man after another, many with little schooling, and developed in them rare leadership by coaching them in the use of this formula. Moreover, his coaching made fortunes for every one of them who followed his instructions. In the chapter on faith, you will read the astounding story of how the formula was applied to the organization of the giant United States Steel Corporation. It was conceived and carried out by one of the young men through whom Mr. Carnegie proved that his formula will work for all who are ready for it. This single application of the secret by that young man, Charles M. Schwab, made him a huge fortune in both money and opportunity. Roughly speaking, this particular application of the formula was worth $600 million. These facts, and they are facts well known to almost every one who knew Mr. Carnegie, give you a fair idea of what the reading of this book may bring to you, provided you know what you want. Even before it had undergone 20 years of practical testing, the secret was passed on to more than 100,000 men and women who have used it for their personal benefit, as Mr. Carnegie planned that they should. Some have made fortunes with it. Others have used it successfully in creating harmony in their homes. The secret to which I refer has been mentioned no fewer than 100 times throughout this book. It has not been directly named, for it seems to work more successfully when it is merely uncovered and left in sight, where those who are ready and searching for it may pick it up. That is why Mr. Carnegie tossed it to me so quietly, without giving me its specific name. If you are ready to put it to use, you will recognize this secret at least once in every chapter. I wish I could tell you how you will know if you are ready, but that would deprive you of much of the benefit you will receive when you make the discovery in your own way. While this book was being written, my own son, who was then finishing the last year of his college work, picked up the manuscript of Chapter 2, read it, and discovered the secret for himself. He used the information so effectively that he went directly into a responsible position at a starting salary greater than the average man ever earns. His story has been briefly described in Chapter 2. When you read it, perhaps you will dismiss any feeling you may have had at the beginning of the book, that it promised too much. And, too, if you have ever been discouraged, if you have had difficulties to surmount which took the very soul out of you, if you have tried and failed, if you were ever handicapped by illness or physical affliction, this story of my son's discovery and use of the Carnegie formula may prove to be the oasis in the desert of lost hope for which you have been searching. This secret was extensively used by President Woodrow Wilson during World War I. It was passed on to every soldier who fought in the war, carefully wrapped in the training received before going to the front. President Wilson told me it was a strong factor in raising the funds needed for the war. Early in the 20th century, Manuel L. Quezon, then resident commissioner of the Philippine Islands, was inspired by the secret to gain freedom for his people, and went on to lead them as its first president. A peculiar thing about this secret is that those who acquire it and use it find themselves literally swept on to success with but little effort, and they never again submit to failure. If you doubt this, study the names and records of those who have used it, wherever they have been mentioned, and be convinced there is no such thing as something for nothing. The secret to which I refer cannot be had without a price, although the price is far less than its value. Those who are not intentionally searching for it cannot have it at any price. It cannot be given away. It cannot be purchased for money because it comes in two parts. One part is already in possession of those who are ready for it. The secret serves equally well all who are ready for it. Education has nothing to do with it. Long before I was born, the secret had found its way into the possession of Thomas A. Edison, and he used it so intelligently that he became the world's leading inventor, although he had but 3 months of schooling. The secret was passed on to a business associate of Mr. Edison. He used it so effectively that, although he was then making only $12,000 a year, he accumulated a great fortune and retired from active business while still a young man. You will find his story at the beginning of the first chapter. It should convince you that riches are not beyond your reach, that you can still be what you wish to be, that money, fame, recognition, and happiness can be had by all who are ready and determined to have these blessings. How do I know these things? You should have the answer before you finish this book. You may find it in the very first chapter or on the last page. While I was performing the 20-year task of research, which I had undertaken at Mr. Carnegie's request, I analyzed hundreds of well-known men, many of whom admitted that they had accumulated their vast fortunes through the aid of the Carnegie secret. Among these men were Henry Ford, Theodore Roosevelt, William Wrigley, John Wanamaker, James J. Hill, Wilbur Wright, William Jennings, Brian Woodrow, Wilson, William Howard, Taft, Albert H., Gary King, Gillette, Alexander Graham, Bell, John D. Rockefeller, Thomas A. Edison, F. W. Woolworth, Clarence Darrow. These names represent but a small fraction of the hundreds of, or to well-known Americans whose achievements, financially and otherwise, prove that those who understand and apply the Carnegie secret reach high stations in life. All the people I have known who have been inspired to use the secret have achieved noteworthy success in their chosen calling. I have never known any person to distinguish himself, or to accumulate riches of any consequence, without possession of the secret. From these two facts, I draw the conclusion that the secret is more important as a part of the knowledge essential for self-determination than anything one receives through what is popularly known as education. What is education, anyway? As far as schooling is concerned, many of these men had very little. John Wanamaker once told me that what little schooling he had, he acquired in very much the same manner as a locomotive takes on water, by scooping it up as it runs. Henry Ford never reached high school, let alone college. I am not attempting to minimize the value of schooling, but I am trying to express my earnest belief that those who master and apply the secret will reach high stations, accumulate riches, and bargain with life on their own terms, even if their schooling has been meager. Somewhere, as you read, the secret to which I refer will jump from the page and stand boldly before you if you are ready for it. When it appears, you will recognize it. Whether you receive the sign in the first or the last chapter, stop for a moment when it presents itself and raise your glass to toast your epiphany. Chapter 1 tells the story of my very dear friend, who has generously acknowledged having seen the mystic sign and whose business achievements are evidence enough that he turned down a glass. As you read his story and the others, remember that they deal with the important problems of life such as all people experience. The problems arising from one's endeavor to earn a living, to find hope, courage, contentment, and peace of mind, to accumulate riches, and to enjoy freedom of body and spirit. Remember, too, as you go through the book, that it deals with facts and not with fiction. Its purpose is to convey a great universal truth through which all who are ready may learn, not only what to do, but also how to do it, and receive the needed stimulus to make a start. As a final word of preparation, may I offer one brief suggestion that may provide a clue to recognizing the Carnegie secret. It is this: all achievement, all earned riches, have their beginning in an idea. If you are ready for the secret, you already possess one half of it. Therefore, you will readily recognize the other half the moment it reaches your mind. Napoleon Hill, 1937. Preface to current edition. When Think and Grow Rich was published in 1937, it was acclaimed as one of the great inspirational books of its time. Together with Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, and Norman Vincent Peale's The Power of Positive Thinking, it became essential reading for men and women who pursued success in their lives and careers. Over 15 million copies of this book have been sold. It became a roadmap for many millions of people to escape the poverty of the Depression era and gain prosperity for themselves, their families, and, in many cases, their employees. Who was Napoleon Hill, and what was the source of his philosophy? Napoleon Hill was born into a poor family in 1883, in a one-room cabin in rural Virginia. He was orphaned at the age of 12 and brought up by relatives. Overcoming poverty and his rebellious nature, he struggled to obtain an education and developed into one of the pragmatic geniuses of his time. Age 13, he started his writing career as a stringer for small-town newspapers, a reporter who wrote items and stories about happenings in his area for pennies a line. Perhaps because of his own struggle to overcome poverty, he became obsessed with why people fail to achieve true financial success and happiness in their lives. To earn a living, he chose to pursue careers in both law and journalism. His early career as a reporter helped finance his way through law school. His big break came when he was given an assignment to write a series of success stories of famous men. One of the men he interviewed for this series was Andrew Carnegie, the world-renowned steel magnate. Mr. Carnegie was so impressed by the young journalist that he gave him a commission that would dominate the next 25 years of Hill's life. The project was to interview over 500 millionaires to find a success formula that could be used by the average person. The interviewees included the greatest and wealthiest men of the era. Among them were Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell, Henry Ford, Charles M. Schwab, Theodore Roosevelt, William Wrigley, Jr., John Wanamaker, William Jennings Bryan, George Eastman, Woodrow Wilson, William H. Taft, John D. Rockefeller, F. W. Woolworth, and many others who are not as well known today. During this period, Andrew Carnegie became Hill's mentor, helping Hill formulate a philosophy of success, drawing on the thoughts and experience of the people who were interviewed. The success of Think and Grow Rich led to a long career as consultant to business leaders, lecturer, and writer of several more books, and made Hill a millionaire in his own right. Napoleon Hill died in November 1970, after a long and successful career. His work stands as a guidepost to individual achievement and has influenced readers for almost 70 years. Updating a classic work is a monumental task. The basic philosophy of the writer cannot be changed. It must always be Napoleon Hill's book, not mine. I approached it in the same way an art restorer looks at a classic painting that is being refurbished. I carefully studied the text and deleted stories and anecdotes that, although meaningful to the reader of the 1930s, have little significance to the reader of the 21st century. I replaced them with examples and illustrations of men and women who, in their careers in recent times, exemplify the principles Napoleon Hill promulgated. In the following chapters you will learn these principles. In addition to reading the success stories of the people Hill studied for the original book, you will meet some of the top achievers of our time, such as Bill Gates, Mary Kay Ash, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Ray Kroc, Michael Jordan, and others. Napoleon Hill's proven steps to riches are as valid for today's reader as they were for his contemporaries. All who read, understand, and apply this philosophy will be better prepared to attract and enjoy these higher standards of living that always have been and always will be denied to all, except those who are ready for them. Be prepared, therefore, when you actively follow Napoleon Hill's precepts to make major changes in your approach to life. It will pay off in enabling you to enjoy a life of harmony and understanding, as well as setting the stage for you to join the ranks of wealthy people. Dr. Arthur R. Pell, 2004.